When a Roman man wanted to marry, he didn't kneel with a ring. He brought his father, his fortune, and sometimes even the gods. In Rome, love began not with whispers, but with contracts, omens, and a plain iron band. A question in the forum. In Rome, marriage was not a mere private affair. It was the weaving of families, the tying of fortunes, the whisper of politics disguised as love. A proposal could be as simple as a question asked between two households, or as grand as a ritual involving witnesses, omens, and feasting. To ask for a hand was to do more than bind two people. It was to stitch together threads of Roman society. Imagine the forum on a clear morning. Merchants hawk olives, senators stride with guarded dignity, and young men glance nervously toward the temples of Juno, goddess of marriage. Among them stands Lucius, a citizen's son, his tunic neat but his hands fidgeting. He is no senator, no wealthy patrician, but his father has found him a match, the daughter of a respected family. But in Rome, Lucius cannot simply declare his love. The first steps of marriage are negotiations, contracts spoken as much between fathers as between would-be bride and groom. Before vows, there must be consent. Before affection, arrangement. A Roman proposal begins not with flowers or rings, but with parchment, witnesses, and the careful nods of family elders. Lucius's father prepares for this moment. At dusk, he will walk with his son to the domus of his intended bride's household. There, amid oil lamps and mosaics, words will be exchanged, formal, cautious, binding. The phrase that matters most is simple. Do you consent? A question aimed not only at the girl but at her father, her lineage, her household gods. Marriage in Rome was sacred to Juno, but it was also a contract before men. To propose was to balance on a knife's edge between ceremony and calculation, hope and strategy. And tonight, Lucius will learn that in Rome, even love begins with law. Fathers at the threshold. The evening falls softly over Rome, the clamor of the forum fading into the hum of private streets. Oil lamps flicker in doorways as families gather within their atriums, where the household gods keep watch from their little shrines. Lucius follows close behind his father, Marcus, whose stride is steady, his expression calm but intent. Tonight, the two men carry more than themselves. They carry the weight of family honor. They arrive at the domus of Gaius, the father of the young woman whose hand is being sought. The doorway is wide, painted with red protective symbols, its lintel carved with simple laurel motifs. A slave admits them, leading the visitors past mosaics of vines and birds, into a hall where Gaius waits with his wife. On a bench by the side, the young woman herself sits quietly, her eyes lowered in modesty. The first exchanges are not about marriage. Hospitality is observed first. Cups of watered wine are offered, bread and olives set before them. The conversation wanders through matters of trade, the health of mutual acquaintances, the recent games held in the circus. Only when the small rituals of courtesy are satisfied does Marcus lean forward, his voice deliberate. Gaius, I come not as neighbor or acquaintance tonight, but as father. I ask if your household would join with mine in the union of your daughter and my son, Lucius. The words hang in the air like incense, formal and heavy. There is no kneeling, no pleading. In Rome, a proposal is less a lover's confession and more a negotiation of alliances. Gaius studies Marcus, then Lucius, weighing not only their words but their standing, their reputations, their promises. His wife glances at her daughter, who remains silent, her face composed but her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Consent must come from both houses. Gaius knows this. He must not only decide if Lucius is suitable but also give voice to the ritual question that binds the arrangement. Do you consent? That question is still waiting in the shadows, but all present can feel it coming. For in Rome, before a heart could speak, the fathers must. The daughters silence. The lamplight glows warmly on the frescoed walls, painting shadows across the hall as the two families sit in their delicate balance of silence and speech. Gaius clears his throat, but his gaze slips briefly to his daughter, Livia. She is seated modestly on a low stool, her hair neatly braided, her linen stola pale against the marble floor. Though Roman daughters are taught that fathers decide such matters, no household is deaf to the will of a girl whose life is about to be bound to another's. Your son, Gaius begins carefully, is of good stock. Marcus, your name is not tarnished, and Lucius carries himself with dignity. He pauses, as though weighing invisible scales. Yet marriage binds not only two houses but two souls. My daughter's consent must be heard, if only by her father. This is not a token courtesy. In Roman law, especially among citizens of standing, marriage requires the consensus of both bride and groom. Without it, no contract holds. But the way consent is asked and answered often passes through ceremony, through guarded words that shield raw feelings. Livia lifts her eyes for the first time. She does not meet Lucius's gaze directly, but her glance brushes his face before lowering again. Her voice, when it comes, is soft but steady. Father, I will obey your will. If this union is pleasing to our household and to the gods, then it is pleasing to me. The formula is precise, the answer proper. Yet beneath it lies a flicker, whether of resignation or of acceptance, none can say. Lucius shifts slightly, his heart leaping at the sound of her voice. To him, it is the first time the future seems real, a thread stretching from this lamplit hall into a shared life. Gaius nods gravely. So it is spoken. Then let us speak of terms. At this, the room shifts from personal to transactional. Dowries, inheritances, expectations of lineage, all become the currency of negotiation. Silver and property are as much part of a Roman proposal as love or devotion. The scribes, when called later, will record not sighs of affection but figures and clauses. Yet beneath the clatter of numbers, a tender truth pulses. In that small exchange, a daughter's whisper and a suitor's hope have already bound something deeper than parchment could hold. The weight of the dowry. The talk drifts from pleasantries into the solemn ground of arrangements. A Roman proposal is not sealed by roses or rings but by numbers spoken aloud, like coins stacked on a table. Gaius leans back, folding his hands, while his wife quietly unrolls a small wax tablet where notes have already been scratched. She knows, as all Roman matrons do, that the fate of her daughter rests as much on property as on prayers. Marcus clears his throat. My son comes with honest prospects. He has no debts, and he will inherit my vineyards near Tiber. Yet we are not senators, nor are we of the highest rank. What we offer is stability and loyalty. Gaius nods, his gaze sharp. And what my daughter carries with her must match in worth. A dowry is no trinket, Marcus, it is the foundation of her marriage. With it she clothes herself, supports her household, and shows her dignity in her new home. He glances to his wife, who speaks softly. 2,000 denarii, in coin and in property. Her garments and jewelry will follow as custom dictates. The number hangs heavy in the air. For Lucius, listening, it is less about wealth than about the reality that this union is binding entire estates together. He wonders, briefly, if Livia has chosen any of those garments herself, or if her dowry is a matter arranged in silence around her. Dowries in Rome could range from modest sums to fortunes large enough to sway political alliances. But they were never gifts. They were security, returnable if the marriage dissolved, symbolic of the bride's worth, and a promise that her family remained invested in her future. Marcus inclines his head. It is generous, and it honors both houses. Let the scribe set it in clay when the time comes. At that, Livia's mother closes the wax tablet with a firm snap. Nothing more need be said on the matter. The men speak of legal witnesses, of the magistrate who must later affirm the engagement, of the calendar day to be chosen with the guidance of augurs. And yet, in a quiet corner of the room, Livia's fingers trace the fold of her stola. She is no merchant, no scribe, but she knows that numbers on a tablet cannot measure the life she is stepping into. For her, the weight of the dowry is not in coin, it is in the expectation that she will uphold 2 households with the constancy of Juno herself. Seeking the gods' favor. No Roman proposal moved forward without first seeking the eyes of the gods. The agreement between fathers, the soft words of a daughter, the ink of contracts, these mattered greatly, but above them all loomed divine approval. A marriage without it was considered brittle, liable to fracture under unseen pressures. Marcus suggests, as custom dictates, that the union be sealed on a day chosen not by convenience but by omen. Gaius agrees, and the 2 men rise at dawn the next morning to meet an augur near the Capitoline hill. The air is cool, the city still drowsy, though vendors are already arranging figs and bread for sale. The augur, robed in white, carries a curved staff and leads them to an open terrace overlooking the forum. There, with deliberate steps, he marks a square in the sky and studies the flight of birds. To Romans, the pattern of wings was no idle sight, it was the very speech of the gods, translated through patience and tradition. A hawk circles high above, steady and unwavering. The augur nods. Juno smiles upon this union. He murmurs. Choose a day after the calends, and let the households prepare. The men exchange relieved glances. An unfavorable omen could have delayed the proposal for weeks or even ended it entirely. To defy the augurs was unthinkable, for it meant defying Rome's divine order itself. That evening, Gaius tells his wife and daughter of the omen. Livia listens, hands folded in her lap. Outwardly, she accepts it as any Roman woman should, with reverence. But within her, a thought lingers, are her own wishes less than the sweep of a bird's wing? Still, she knows the answer. Rome is a city where gods and fathers speak louder than daughters. Yet even she cannot deny a flicker of comfort. The hawk's strong, steady flight seemed a sign not only of divine will but of endurance. Perhaps, she thinks, her marriage will carry the same. And so, with heaven's silent nod, the proposal edges closer to becoming destiny. The betrothal ritual. With omens favorable, the next step is sponsalia, the formal betrothal. This is no quiet handshake but a recognized contract, witnessed and remembered, often celebrated with a small feast. It is here that promises are spoken aloud, and gifts are exchanged to bind what words alone cannot. The families gather once more, this time in Marcus's house, its atrium decorated with garlands of laurel and rosemary. A few close friends and relatives are invited, for witnesses lend strength to the agreement. The household gods are offered wine and incense, their little clay faces blackened with soot from past prayers. At the center, Lucius stands before Gaius, the bride's father. There is no priest here, sponsalia is a civil matter, but the presence of family and witnesses makes it sacred in its own way. Marcus speaks first. My son pledges himself to Livia, daughter of Gaius. Let those gathered here remember his word, for in Rome, a promise before witnesses is binding. Then Gaius responds, and my daughter is pledged to Lucius. So it is spoken, and so it shall stand. A scribe scratches the agreement into wax, but the more vivid seal comes with the exchange of gifts. Traditionally, the groom, or his father, offers a token, a ring of iron, plain and unadorned, to be worn on the fourth finger of the left hand. Romans believed a vein ran from that finger to the heart, making the gesture more than symbolic. Lucius, his hand steady though his pulse quickens, slips the iron band onto Livia's finger. She accepts it with calm dignity, lowering her eyes, though a faint flush colors her cheeks. The room, silent for a breath, then murmurs approval. Wine is poured, bread broken, olives passed around. The betrothal feast is modest compared to a wedding, but it marks the turning point, from strangers bound by negotiation to promised partners. For Lucius, the weight of the moment settles not in the iron ring, but in the quiet glance Livia gives him when the others look away. It is brief, but enough to tell him she too feels the invisible thread tightening around their lives. Preparing the trousseau. With the betrothal sealed, the city hums differently for both households. For Lucius, every stride through the forum feels steadier, his friends now looking at him not as a bachelor but as a man destined for a household of his own. For Livia, the days fold into a quiet flurry of preparations, most of which swirl around her without her command. Her mother leads the gathering of the dose, the dowry's physical form. Chests of clothing are opened, linens inspected, jewelry polished. A Roman bride's trousseau is more than her garments, it is her future comfort, the display of her family's dignity. Each stola, each mantle of wool, is chosen with care. Even the spindle and distaff, symbols of her domestic duty, are set aside, for a Roman wife must embody industry as much as grace. Livia sits near the household shrine, her fingers working the hem of a garment, adding small stitches where the thread has loosened. Though she works quietly, her mind stirs with thoughts of the unknown. She wonders if Lucius prefers the bold red of the bridal veil, the flammeum, or if he even cares about the shade of her garments. She wonders if his household gods will accept her as their new keeper. Meanwhile, in Marcus's house, Lucius prepares as well, not with fabric, but with offerings. He consults with his father on which relatives to invite, which sacrifices must be made to the Lauras and Penates, and how to secure musicians for the wedding procession. His friends tease him lightly, but with envy. They know that soon he will sit at the head of his own table, his wife at his side, his house alive with children and duty. In both homes, wax tablets fill with lists, expenses, and obligations. Slaves bustle, carrying messages across town, arranging for oil, wine, garlands, and torches. The wedding date, chosen under favorable omens, grows nearer each day. Yet beneath the practical stir, the quiet heart of the matter beats on. Livia, in the dim lamplight of her chamber, holds the plain iron ring on her finger and whispers to herself. So it begins. The night before. The night before the wedding, a hush settles over Gaius's household. The bustle of preparation has slowed, leaving only the faint glow of oil lamps and the murmurs of women moving softly through the corridors. Livia sits in her chamber, her veil folded neatly on the stool beside her. The flammeum, dyed the fiery red of dawn, waits to cover her tomorrow, a symbol of transformation, from maiden to wife, from daughter to matron. Her mother enters quietly, carrying a small bowl of incense. Together they kneel before the household shrine, the faces of the Lauras flickering in the lamp's glow. Livia's mother places her hand gently over her daughter's and whispers, "Pray, child, for tomorrow you leave this house. You will walk from the hearth where you were raised into one that will be your own. Ask the gods to make your steps steady." Livia closes her eyes. Her prayers are a mixture of ritual words and private longing. She asks Juno, protector of marriage, for favor. She asks Vesta, goddess of the hearth, to guide her hands in her new household. And quietly, in the corner of her heart, she asks simply for kindness from the man who will soon be her husband. In another quarter of the city, Lucius too prepares. He and his father pour wine before their family's shrine, the air heavy with the scent of burning herbs. Marcus speaks solemnly. "You take a wife tomorrow, my son. You do not take her lightly. Remember, marriage is not for passion alone, but for strength, for children, for Rome." Lucius bows his head, accepting his father's words. Yet, in the privacy of his thoughts, he remembers the brief glance Livia gave him during the betrothal feast. It is that look, not dowries, not contracts, that steadies him. As the city sleeps, two households glow with lamplight, their prayers rising into the Roman night. Tomorrow, drums and laughter will echo in the streets. But tonight is for silence, for farewells, for hearts bracing themselves before they step into destiny. The wedding morning. The sun rises golden over Rome, casting long shadows across tiled roofs and waking the city to the sound of carts and vendors. Yet within Gaius's household, the air is charged with something more than daily commerce. It is alive with ritual. Today, Livia becomes a bride. Her chamber is bustling. Slaves move quickly, braiding her hair into 6 locks, the sani crines, an ancient style reserved for brides and priestesses. Each braid is tied with woolen bands, symbols of chastity and duty. Her veil, the flammeum, glows like fire in the morning light, its red hue draped gently over her head. Around her waist, a woolen girdle is tied in a knot of Hercules, said to protect fertility, and to be loosened only by her husband on their wedding night. Her mother adjusts the folds of her daughter's stola, smoothing the fabric with steady hands, though her eyes shine with unspoken emotion. "You leave as my child," she whispers, "but return to me as a matron." Meanwhile, in Marcus's home, Lucius dons a fresh white tunic, its edges marked with purple. Friends gather around him, laughing lightly to disguise their nerves for him. They clap his shoulders, jest about feasts and children to come, but in his chest Lucius feels a weight both solemn and exhilarating. Outside, guests begin to assemble. Musicians arrive, carrying pipes and drums, their instruments ready to announce the procession. Torches are prepared, for though it is daylight, no Roman wedding is complete without fire to symbolize purity and the presence of the gods. At the threshold of her father's house, Livia pauses. She kneels before the hearth one last time, touching the flames that have warmed her since birth. This is her farewell. Tradition demands it. A bride must part from her family's fire before taking her place at another. When she rises, veiled and radiant, the procession stirs into motion. The wedding has begun. The wedding procession. The streets of Rome stir with curiosity as Livia steps out from her father's domus, veiled in her flammeum, her attendants flanking her like guardians of flame. The musicians strike their notes, pipes trilling brightly, drums thudding with steady rhythm, and the wedding procession begins. At its head walks a torchbearer, carrying a flame taken from Gaius's hearth. This light, dancing against the daylight, will guide Livia to her new home, ensuring the warmth of her childhood hearth passes into her married life. Behind him march boys singing playful verses, some ribald, some mocking, for it was tradition to mix laughter with solemnity, lest envy or ill will sour the day. "Talassio! Talassio!" the crowd calls, echoing an ancient cry once shouted at Roman weddings. Its origin is old, half legend, but its meaning now is simple, a blessing, a cheer for the union. Lucius walks beside Livia, his posture upright yet his steps carefully measured to match hers. He cannot see her face beneath the glowing veil, but the faint outline of her hand in his own steadies him. From doorways and market stalls, onlookers pause to watch. Some mutter blessings, others make jokes, and children dart alongside the procession, laughing at the spectacle. At intervals, women in the crowd shout verses meant to protect the bride from envy. Others sprinkle nuts and small coins along the path, symbols of fertility and prosperity. The sound of bronze clinking on stone mingles with the rhythm of pipes. When they reach Marcus's house, Lucius bends to lift his bride across the threshold. This is not mere courtesy, but ritual. A Roman bride must not stumble upon entering her new home. It would be an ill omen, suggesting misfortune in her marriage. Carried, she cannot falter. As Lucius carries her through the doorway, the flame of the procession's torch is brought inside and placed upon his hearth. The moment is complete. Livia has crossed from daughter to wife, from one fire to another. The guests cheer, their voices ringing into the Roman afternoon. The wedding feast. Inside Marcus's domus, garlands of ivy and laurel drape across the atrium columns, and the air is heavy with the aroma of roasted meats, honey cakes, and spiced wine. The guests file in, shedding the dust of the street, their laughter swelling against the high ceilings. Livia, still veiled, is led to a place of honor beside Lucius. Before her, tables gleam with bronze dishes piled high, dates stuffed with nuts, olives glistening with oil, platters of fresh bread. Slaves move silently, refilling cups with watered wine as musicians in the corner strike lively tunes on pipes and lyres. The feast begins not with indulgence, but with blessing. An elder relative rises, lifting his cup. To Juno, guardian of wives! To Hymen, keeper of marriage! His voice trembles with age but carries across the hall. Others echo him, raising their cups until the sound of clinking bronze fills the air. Lucius catches the faintest movement beneath Livia's veil, her head bowing slightly as though in gratitude. He wonders if she, too, is praying silently with each toast. The feast unfolds with a rhythm of seriousness and jest. Some guests tell bawdy jokes, poking fun at the couple's future intimacy. Others lean toward solemnity, praising the endurance of Roman matrons, reminding Lucius of his duties as husband, not only to love but to protect, provide, and honor. Livia's mother watches her daughter carefully, her eyes shining with pride and melancholy. She knows this day marks a boundary. Never again will Livia belong fully to her father's household. Now she must weave her place into another family's fabric. At last, honey cakes are brought forth, sweet and crumbling, a symbol of the sweetness hoped for in the marriage. Guests break pieces together, laughing as crumbs scatter across their fingers. The musicians strike a brighter tune, and the feast becomes merrier, voices rising with wine, filling the house with warmth. In that glow, the marriage feels less like a contract, less like the weight of dowries and omens, and more like what it truly is, a union of two souls, witnessed by Rome, sanctified by fire and feast. The threshold of night. As dusk folds gently over the city, the laughter and music of the feast begin to soften. Guests linger with cups in hand, their voices low and warm, but all know that the most intimate ritual of the day is about to unfold. The bride must be led to her chamber. Livia rises, still veiled in her flammeum, her movements graceful though weighted with solemnity. Her attendants gather around her, singing a soft hymn to Hymen, the god of marriage. Their voices weave through the hall like threads of gold, carrying both reverence and joy. Lucius stands, his face calm though his heart beats fast beneath his tunic. He offers his hand, and though her veil hides her expression, Livia places hers into his with a quiet steadiness. Together they walk toward the inner rooms, guided by torchlight, their path flanked by friends and family murmuring blessings. At the threshold of the bridal chamber, Lucius pauses. Tradition demands that prayers be offered before the union is consummated. A small altar glows with incense, its smoke curling upward like pale ribbons. He bows his head, murmuring words to Juno, asking for harmony, strength, and children. Livia, still veiled, lays a sprig of myrtle upon the flame, its leaves crackling softly in the heat. When the prayers are complete, the attendants lead her inside, placing her gently upon the marriage bed, its covers embroidered with symbols of fertility. Her veil is lowered over her lap, her hands resting upon it as she waits. Lucius follows, the room now quiet except for the flicker of the oil lamp. For a moment, time holds still, the clamor of Rome, the weight of contracts, even the voices of the guests beyond the walls all seem far away. When he finally lifts her veil, their eyes meet clearly for the first time as husband and wife. There is nervousness, yes, but also a strange and tender recognition, as though they have both crossed not only a threshold of stone but one of the heart. Outside, the feast continues into the night. But within this quiet chamber, a new household has been born. The morning after. Dawn creeps softly across the rooftops of Rome, the city stirring once more with the cries of vendors and the rumble of carts. Within Marcus's domus, the first rays of sunlight filter through the shutters of the bridal chamber. The oil lamp, burned low through the night, flickers its last. Livia rises quietly, her veil now folded neatly at the foot of the bed. She moves with a new gravity, for she has crossed into a role sacred in Rome, matrona, wife and mistress of a household. Slaves bow their heads as she passes, no longer greeting her as a guest but as their new lady. Lucius joins her, his expression calm but touched with pride. Together they step into the atrium where Marcus and his wife wait by the household shrine. A small fire glows on the altar, incense curling into the morning air. It is here that the bride makes her first offering to her new household gods, the Lares and Penates. Livia places a piece of bread upon the flames, whispering prayers for peace, fertility, and harmony within the walls she now calls her own. The act is simple, yet it marks her full acceptance into the house, her loyalty transferred, her destiny bound. Afterward, relatives and friends gather again, some bleary-eyed from the long night of feasting. They greet the couple with fresh congratulations, laughter mixing with yawns. The mood is lighter now, for the solemnity has passed. The marriage is no longer a promise but a living reality. Lucius's mother clasps Livia's hands and says, "Welcome, daughter, to our hearth. May you keep it burning bright." These words, though spoken softly, are formal, binding, and cherished. The day continues with smaller rites, sharing of gifts, blessings from neighbors, and the weaving of Livia into the daily rhythm of her new household. By sunset, she is no longer seen as the girl who left her father's threshold, but as the woman who has stepped fully into her own. Rome recognizes her now not as Livia, daughter of Gaius, but as Livia, wife of Lucius. A marriage for Rome. In the days that follow, the city greets the marriage not with quiet indifference but with watchful eyes. In Rome, every union carries weight beyond the couple. It echoes through families, through property, through lineage, and even through politics. A wedding is as much a civic act as a personal one. Neighbors stop Marcus in the forum to offer congratulations, though many also ask practical questions cloaked in politeness. What dowry was settled? Will Lucius now manage more of the vineyards? Gossip travels quickly, and the details of marriage, numbers, estates, alliances, are currency in Roman society. For Livia, her new role as matrona is immediately visible. She appears unveiled now, her hair arranged in the styles of married women, adorned with ribbons of wool. When she walks to the market with attendants, others greet her not with girlish familiarity but with a respectful matrona. She is expected to be modest, industrious, and a keeper of her husband's honor. Even her silence, carefully measured, becomes part of her dignity. At home, she begins the daily rituals of offering incense at the hearth, overseeing the household slaves, and weaving at the loom. These acts are not small. They embody Roman ideals of a wife as the heart of domestic order, binding together the threads of family and tradition. Lucius, meanwhile, finds himself looked at differently among his peers. No longer a youth drifting between forums and games, he is now a husband, a man with responsibilities. His voice carries more weight in gatherings, his opinion more sought. To be married in Rome is to be anchored, and that anchor earns respect. Yet beneath the public scrutiny and civic duty, there is also something simpler. In quiet moments, when Livia sets bread on the table or when Lucius pauses in his vineyard at dusk, the two feel a growing bond that is theirs alone. Amid Rome's endless demands, they begin to carve out a private world. Their marriage is not merely for themselves, nor only for their families. It is, in its Roman way, a service to the city itself. But within that great design, they start to discover something more tender, a companionship that is theirs, quiet and enduring. The binding of two lives. Evening descends once more over Rome, the sky painted in purples and golds as smoke drifts lazily from 1,000 hearths. In the courtyard of their new home, Lucius and Livia sit quietly together, the day's bustle fading into stillness. The world beyond their walls may see them as alliance, as dowry, as civic duty, but here, in the soft hush of twilight, they are simply two souls learning the rhythm of shared life. Livia's fingers rest lightly on the spindle in her lap, its threads slowly turning, a symbol as old as Rome itself. Lucius watches her, not as a negotiator's daughter or as a dowry bearer, but as the woman who now shares his hearth. He reaches to pour her a cup of watered wine, the gesture small yet filled with meaning, respect, care, acknowledgement. The household gods flicker in their shrine, accepting the incense she has offered earlier. Their smoke curls upward like the weaving of destiny itself, two strands wound together, not easily parted. In Rome, marriage is not built on sudden passion or fleeting vows. It is rooted in endurance, in the silent strength of shared duties, in the weaving of lives until they cannot be unspooled. Yet, within that frame of law and ritual, something gentler takes root, affection that grows like ivy, winding quietly until it covers all. Livia lifts her eyes, meeting Lucius's gaze without the veil that once hid her face. There is no audience now, no witnesses or augurs, no scribes marking down their words. Only a man and a woman, joined not just by fathers and gods, but by the slow, steady recognition that they are partners in the long journey ahead. Thus, in the quiet after the feast, after the omens and contracts, after the cheering cries of Talassio, the true heart of a Roman proposal is revealed, not merely a pact of families, nor a service to the city, but the timeless human hope that two lives, bound together, may find both duty and love in the same breath.